Hello, dear friends and colleagues. Welcome to the second part of this series of videos where we're talking about all those things that we have to do before we commit ourselves to interpret for an assignment. If you already watched the first part of this video, welcome to the second part. If not, I would suggest you first watch the one that came out a few days ago before you start watching this one. Let's continue. We ended with the first video with us sending a message, a written message, either by email or by text or by WhatsApp or any other platform to our client, where we are accepting the option because we already evaluated a series of circumstances, but we are also asking them for more information before we can firmly commit to the assignment. The first thing that we have to do is that on this message, we have to inform the client of our professional fees. We have enough elements now because we know the dates, the type of interpreting, the time of the day, whether or not we have to travel, and so forth, subject matter and so forth. So we are prepared to quote a professional fee estimate. So we will send our option to the client with the information about our professional fee, explaining to them in detail how much it would cost them to receive our services, our professional services for interpreting during the dates of the interpretation. Also, establishing what the expenses to be covered by the client are, of our travel expenses, lodging, air, train, ground transportation, whatever might be the case, our per diem, and all those things. And also, we have to quote them our professional fee for the travel days. In other words, the client has to be aware of the fact that we're charging when we have to travel, not just for the dates that we interpreted it, but also for the dates that it took us to get to the venue and the days that it took us to get back to our home base. So we have to quote the fee to the client with all that specificity, because if the client doesn't accept it, then we might decline the assignment. You haven't committed to anything other than you accepted the option, so you penciled in this assignment in your calendar, but you're waiting for the client to satisfy all these other doubts that you have, all these questions that you're asking, so forth. Next, in that same communication, besides touching the professional fees topic, we should ask the client who your boothmate or boothmates will be for the assignment. This is very important because sometimes you might already know that person and you might say, great, I love working with that individual, let's move on. But sometimes you might not know that individual and you need to do your homework. You do some research, you ask around to see if that person would be a good fit in the booth with you. Here, if you don't know the person, you have to have some quality parameters to decide if you want to work with this person. The past experience that other colleagues that you trust have had with that person. In my case, a very important thing is if the person belongs to the International Association of Conference Interpreters or not. These are factors that we take into account to see if we are comfortable with that person sharing the booth with us. But sometimes it might be the case that we do know the interpreter and we don't feel like we should be working with that individual. Now, some people might say, well, that's lack of professionalism because we're supposed, as professional interpreters, to work with anybody that they assign us to in the booth. And I would dispute that, and I would tell you the real sign of professionalism is to decline assignments when you consider that the boothmate is not the right fit, because otherwise it would be a disservice to the client because they would not be getting the best possible service. So if you know the person and you don't want to work with that person, then you should decline. And it could be for different reasons. They have to be valid reasons. Maybe because the person is not a very good interpreter. And by not a very good interpreter, I mean somebody that doesn't have really good interpreting skills, somebody that maybe doesn't work good in the booth with you. Perhaps it's a person that has a difficult completing their preparation assignments before the day of the event. Maybe somebody that is not a good passive interpreter when you are the active one. And those are valid reasons to decide not to work with that person. Sometimes the person might be an excellent interpreter, a very good passive interpreter, and all those things, but it's a person that is just very difficult to work with. It's a person that is hostile, that is very negative, and it's just not the kind of person that you want to work with. It's too difficult, brings food to the booth, certain things that you just don't want to deal with because you have to be spending all of your energy on the rendition. Or maybe sometimes there's a third reason why you reject an assignment based on who the bootmate is. And that could be when, even though you have worked or you have not worked with that person, uh, you believe that that person will, working with that person will hurt your professional career. It's the kind of interpreter that I would call radioactive. There are some colleagues that are good interpreters, that are very easygoing in the booth and all that, but they are famous for working under subpar work conditions, that they work for very low professional fees, and you really don't want to be associated with that type of individual because you will be hurting your professional practice for future assignments. So in those cases, you should, if you feel like you have to do it, also decline the assignment based on who the boothmate is. Now, a big warning sign. If the client tells you in their answer, well, we don't have a boothmate yet, or we cannot tell you that yet, then that's a huge red flag. When people don't want to tell you who your boothmate is because the person is really not a good interpreter, is a very difficult interpreter, or is somebody that others have turned down working with already because he's one of those radioactive interpreters that will harm your professional career. So in those cases, by all means, my friends, please decline. Once that all these conditions are satisfied, that you reach an agreement on your professional fees, expenses, the way of payment, the time period that the client has to pay you, the interest and penalty clauses in case of delayed payment or not being paid. And once that you have accepted who your bootmate is, then you're all set, my friends. At that point, you can answer, again, always in writing, by email, by letter, by text, or any other messaging services to the client, confirming your acceptance of the assignment, which in that case will no longer be just an option, but it will be a firm offer and acceptance. And at that point on, you are committed to do that interpretation. So you see, accepting or rejecting or declining an assignment involves much more than just opening your Outlook and seeing if you're available on those days. So go beyond checking dates in your calendar and do an assessment of all these circumstances, and then you will act professionally and you will go into an assignment with your eyes wide open and minimizing the unpleasant surprises. At least that is my opinion. Thank you very much.